Hi everyone, so I'm going to show you how to paint a strawberry today. I'm showing you with a layering technique. So I'm going to very quickly draw it out so you know how I would approach drawing this out. So I'm curving round, coming to the point. What's quite useful is I've popped it on a white piece of scrap paper because it helps you to see where the shadow is. So you can see very clearly where the shadow is. Obviously wherever I'm drawing from is a different angle to wherever you might be drawing from, but you just want it to look strawberry shaped. This is all about the watercolour technique and how this works. So within here we've got the head of the strawberry with the stalk, and I'm going to come in and just create this bit. I want an indication of where the shadow is. Shadow is really important when you're doing still life. And you also want an indication of where the very white highlights are. So I've got a very white one there, a very white one there, and a fairly white one there. I'm using some Saunders Waterford paper. It's about 5.5 inches by 7.5 inches, a nice cotton paper to do this layering. The layering always works better on a cotton paper. And then I've just got some Cotman pans here, so I can pop a link to that in the description. I'm also going to use a little bit of drawing gum or masking fluid to pick out the seeds on the strawberry, and I'm ready with that. But I'm going to do a layer of paint first. So this is with a round number 10. It's just by accident I've got a little bit of something on there already. I'm going to wet the strawberry. I'm coming around the green area because I don't really want to wet that at this stage. So I'm just going to lose the dirt off there. Yellows taint very easily, so this is cadmium yellow. So I've dipped into some water and I'm coming on to the strawberry with this first layer. I'm avoiding those white highlights. I'm sort of avoiding the stalks. It's not the end of the world if I get anything on the stalks at this stage. I'm going to dip in very slightly into the cadmium red. I'm looking where the shadow is. Just going to slightly build that in. At this stage I do not want this to be dark. It will all become apparent in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that is nicely dry and it's warm to the touch. What I'm doing now is I'm preserving this lighter colour on the paper with masking fluid. So this is a blue masking fluid, it's called a drawing gum, and this is a colour shaper. So this is a silicone tipped tool which is actually used for blending pastel, but it's fantastic for applying masking fluid as well, and it's got quite a lot of precision and it's pretty much indestructible, which masking fluid does tend to ruin your brushes, so avoid using your brushes with it. And this is going to preserve this lighter colour on the paper. It is important that this is dry before you put it on, because as you rub it off it will rip the paper if it's not. So I'm basically just creating the seed marks within here. I didn't show you them all because there's a lot for me to do and it would have been a lot for you to watch. but they're pretty much on there now. That needs to dry. So when you've done this, you can just literally wipe the masking fluid off the colour shaper, and then it's ready to use again the next time. Okay, so I do need to let that dry now, but whilst I'm letting that dry, I can start to look at the shadow. So we've got a bit of shadow here, which I've already drawn out. So I'm wetting that area. And what I want, what I like for a white shadow is purple. Purple works really well. So this is alizarin crimson into there. And then this is cerulean blue. Any way you want to make a watery purple will work. So if you've got another red and another blue, then just use those. It's just that this happens to be what I've got in this kit. So I'm going to paint this colour onto the shadow. This is going to ground the object, ground it to a surface. So that was with my round number 6. Round number 10. I'm going to go to my round number 6 now. And what I want to do is pick up something darker. So this is burnt sienna, no, burnt umber. What I'm going to do is just run that along the edge of the strawberry so that it really does bring out that the strawberry is on the surface. It's just giving it a darker edge. It's a really good tip. You can blend it through a little bit. But all of a sudden it's sat on something now. In fact, I'm going to bring this a little bit further. So I'm concentrating on getting a really nice edge on the strawberry. Round number 6, nice thick paint, burnt umber. And then just letting that blend in. Take a little bit more of the purple on, just to blend that through a little bit. It's got a really nice shadow there. I'm going to dry this off. Okay, so that's all nicely dry, and we're going to start to layer now. And it's looking at the colours and the tones within the strawberry. So when you are layering, you're adding another layer of water, or a very thin layer of paint if you're going to glaze, which is a thin layer onto dry often, but we're going to do a thin layer onto wet. And what we're going to do is keep building up, so we can now use the colours to build depth. So I've wet it. I'm going to start to come in. This is cadmium red, and I'm looking at the tone of the strawberry all the time. So where is it darker? Where is it lighter? I'm going to swap down to a number 6 as well. I'll utilise both brushes so that I'm getting into the right places. I don't want to lose these white highlights. Nice edges. So there's a little bit more light here, which I'm going to keep. With every layer that you're popping on now, you're adding more depth. So rinsing my brush, I can dip into a bit of the cadmium yellow. I'm just going to add a little bit more warmth in there. I'm going to dip into the alizarin crimson. Just start to add a little bit. It's a good shadow colour. Add a little bit of shadow. You just got to remember, every time you're doing this, you don't have to achieve it all in one go. You can do as many layers as you like. The trick really is to keep them nice and thin, not mess around too much. You'll notice that I'm going on and I'm just letting the paint do its thing. I'm not messing too much with anything. The temptation to keep going like that with the brush can then blend it too much. I'm actually going to pick up a little bit of cerulean blue. So where I can see a cooler tone, and this may sound mad at the minute, I'm going to add a little bit of blue in. It's going to help pick out the shadow underneath. Okay, so I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry now. It's warm to the touch. So I'm going to come into this stalk now and just start to get a bit of colour on this. So this is a bit of cadmium yellow, and this is my round number 6. I'm going to start to bring in a little bit of sap green. I'm going to try and leave that little bit of light in the centre. If I dip into, you'll notice I've not rinsed my brush in any of these. I'm going to dip into the cerulean blue, just bring a bit more of that. I'm all the time looking at tone and looking at whether it's cool or warm. A bit of blue often cools something down. I'm going to dot a little bit of that in the centre. There's a lot of layers, but you have to keep drying, so dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. So I now want to bold up the colour. So I've got my tone in there. I'm being nice and careful with the water. This is my round number 10. Taking some water on, and I'm going to come back in with the cadmium red. Start to pop this on now. Because watercolours are transparent, I know cadmium red is opaque or semi-opaque depending on what brand you've got, but it still will show those layers through. It is not that opaque that you can't see through. So tonally, all those layers are there when we're building up now. So we're building those layers on, and for every layer we now put on, the more depth we're going to get onto this strawberry. And a little bit of alizarin in there. So I'll dry this one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry, and I'm going to come out on now with one final layer. So what I've done is I've taken some of the cadmium red and some of the alizarin crimson together, and I've basically just checked that it is pretty much the same colour as the strawberry, because that's now what I'm trying to achieve. Around number 6, I'm just going to come round the stalk with a little bit of water. So this colour isn't that thick, it's a glaze. I've come round the stalk because I want to make sure that it blends in, but I'm coming over everything now with one final layer. This is to really bold it up. So there isn't that much water on this here. Then I'm going to come in with my round number 6. I want to make sure the highlights are really neat. I want to make sure the edges are perfect. I want to make sure I've got a nice even coat on. I'm coming up to these highlights to get those nice and shiny. You can see the depth this strawberry's got now. This is all layers, and you can still see those other layers underneath. I'm just going to dip into a little bit of blue. I haven't rinsed my brush out, and I'm going to bring that underneath the, this is ultramarine blue, underneath the stalk, because I just want to give a little bit more shadow. And contrast, so that stands out a little bit more there. And then the last thing I'm going to do, you'll see I've washed my brush out, I've dabbed it off. Where this extra bit of light was, we're just going to lift a little bit of that back out. So that was with a damp brush. And then I'm going to dry this off now. Okay, so that's really nicely dry, and tonally and the colour wise it's perfect, and I can still see all the way through to the yellows and to the darker reds here, so all of that is still showing, the layers are still there. So what I'm using now is a masking fluid remover. I'm just going to take the seeds away. Now this is when you see how many layers we have actually put on, because I expected them to look quite yellow and they don't, because of the depth of the layers that we've got there. So we are going to have to pop a little bit more on them. They are actually different to the white of the highlights, but only slightly. So I'm going to come in with some cadmium yellow and my round number 6, just come over these. Just lightly dabbing. If it slightly lifts some of the colour that's already there, even better, because it would just blend them in nicely. Masking fluid can look like a little bit like it's added on with white blobs, and you don't want that to happen. So that little, even if you go over it a couple of times, that little blend will help them gel together. Okay, so I've dried that off. Now you would think this looks like a fantastic strawberry. There can't be anything possibly else that could enhance it. Well, there is. It's called hard shadow. So I'm going to take that mix that we came on with for a glaze with my round number 10, and I'm going to pop on some hard shadow. So that hard shadow is coming directly where the light isn't. I'm going to pop that in. That is going to give it even more of a sheen when it's dried. Pop a little bit in there as well. Okay, so I'll dry that one off. And there we go, so that's all finished. If when you get to this bit, if any of these you've lost those little pips, you can, with just a damp brush, just lift them out back a little bit, just so you get to see those little bits of seed pips a bit more, and that will help it to feel like it's still got that transparency through there. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Please do like, subscribe and share. I'll pop a playlist here for you, and another video for I've done apple and pear, nice simple still lifes using layering that you can have a go at. See you next time.